And a small warning just to make you aware that this session is being recorded. So this is for people that contacted the Learning Futures program and wanted to attend this webinar, but unfortunately couldn't make this time. So the recording will be made available through our website once we finished here today. That's equally going to be made available to yourselves, so you can come back and have a listen through if there's anything that you wanted to pick up again in the future. So officially, let me welcome you to the e-learning delivery webinar as part of the Learning Futures CPD modules. A few bits of housekeeping to start with. You've probably covered this already, but as I say, there is the loudspeaker icon at the top of the screen, and there's a drop down arrow next to it if you need to adjust your speaker volume. So if we're a bit loud, then just turn that down. If not, make it a little bit louder. Or if you can't hear anything at all, just give us a shout, type something in the chat area, and we'll do what we can to help. We've got a fantastic presenter today, Peter Kilcoyne. Many of you will know Peter. I can see in the chat area in the bottom right hand corner. Peter very kindly joined us today to share his thoughts and also the approaches at the heart of Worcestershire College. So I'm going to ask Peter to join us in a second, but before we do that, just to introduce myself, Rob Martin on behalf of the Learning Futures programme, and I'll be in the background of this webinar, and I'll pick up once Peter's done his input just to run you through the other stages of the CPD. That process that we're using is that we want to have these experts who are able to share their experience and their thoughts, and once we've had that webinar, we're then going to point you in the direction of some resources that we've done some research online to look at what's available. All those resources are freely available, so there's no cost involved with those. And we'll also then point in the direction of some CPD activities to help you apply this back into your own place of work. So we're looking to support your organisation's development, and what we'd asked in return is that you use the Learning Futures website to share your experience. So you'll be able to blog on that website of how it's gone for yourself. And again, I'll show you that once Peter's done his input. This webinar is part of a series, so you can see on the screen there's a number of exciting webinar contents and CPD contents that we've got. Leadership and Governance, the webinar was held last week, and you'll be able to access the recording, but you can also see what's coming up in the future as well. But really, without any further ado, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Peter, and I'm just going to load Peter's slides. And Peter, as I say, has kindly agreed to share some time with us this afternoon with regards to the fantastic approaches that he's developed at the heart of Worcestershire College. And just whilst I'm loading your slides, Peter, if you'd just like to explain, apparently something happened last Friday night. I'm not sure what it was, but if you'd just like to let the audience know.
Yeah, cheers, Rob. Yeah, I had a wonderful Friday night with some of my colleagues at some fancy hotel, I think the Grosvenor House Hotel on Park Lane. Where we won the Times Ed Award for Outstanding Use of Technology. So yeah, I haven't stopped smiling since.
Brilliant, Peter. Your slides are there, so over to you, Peter.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Peter Kilcoyne. I'm the ILT Director at Heart of Worcestershire College. You can see my email details there, and very happy to take any later email questions, or if you want to look at ways that you can work with our college, we're very keen to work with other partners on developing blended learning. Okay, so I'll begin sort of at the start of our journey as to why we decided to go with a blended learning curriculum at Heart of Worcestershire College. We're now in our 4th year of doing this, and there are 3 main drivers behind it. Firstly, we wanted to make as much use of all of the engaging stuff that I'm sure as fellow enthusiasts for this approach to education, you would agree with me, that learning technologies offers for enhancing learning. And my college, 4 years ago, I'm sure pretty like every other college in the country, the use of learning technology is kind of a bit of a minority sport and very patchy across the college. I used to work for JISC, and so I've seen this in many colleges that I visited then, that in most colleges there are a handful of people who are very enthusiastic about using ILT, who are doing some amazing stuff with it. Then the majority of staff are probably using PowerPoint when they're doing some classroom teaching and uploading some documents into Moodle. Not particularly exciting. And then there's a small number of dinosaurs in most colleges that simply refuse to do anything involving technology. And that's where we were at Heart of Worcestershire College, or as it was then, Worcester College of Technology 4 years ago. And we wanted to address that. We wanted to make sure that all of our students had equal access to having a technology enhanced learning, regardless of whether they were lucky or not lucky enough to be taught by one of these enthusiasts. So we wanted to develop a cross-college blended learning curriculum, and initially 4 years ago we went with 15%, and so we reduced our teaching hours across the board for all of our full-time level 2 and level 3 courses by 15%, and replaced that with online learning. The second reason that we wanted to do it, which to me I think has become the most important reason, is to develop the independent learning and digital literacy skills of our students. We were at the time doing a GISC project on digital literacy and researching the skills that our students have, and the main findings were that the majority of our students weren't necessarily particularly strong on digital literacy. There's all this talk about digital natives and that this generation are meant to be whizzes on everything to do with technology, and we found that wasn't really the case. They may be very good at using Facebook and taking selfies, but when it came to applying learning technologies, finding stuff on the web and evaluating it, more advanced use of office tools, a lot of our students weren't very confident. Independent learning was also a real issue for us, and I think this is from discussions with people around the country, this is a general concern in the FE sector, that because schools are so target driven, they do tend to spoon feed students quite a lot, and they don't come to colleges with great independent learning skills. And we felt this was a vehicle where we could help our learners develop those skills, which would equip them in a great way for either progressing to university or progressing into the world of work. The third reason, and kind of the depressing reason, and this is even more so now than it was 4 years ago, is that as funding is being cut year on year for the sector, and I don't expect that to stop for the next few years, we have to make efficiency savings that we simply can't afford to put teachers in front of learners for the same number of hours that we used to. So in order to maintain quality, we really need to find ways to deliver learning in a more efficient manner. And so those were the three main drivers. I'll take a pause there for any questions or thoughts.
Yeah, there's no questions that have been registered so far, Peter, so please feel free to crack on.
Now this approach has been kind of driven across the sector very strongly since the publication of the FELTAG Recommendations, with a recommendation that all providers should be delivering 10% online by this September, with incentives to increase this to up to 50% by September 2017. Now, I must say I'm a massive enthusiast for all things blended learning. I believe that the 50% figure is absolutely bonkers though, and the thought of level 2 learners doing 50% of their curriculum online in 2 years' time is terrifying. Now, thankfully, in the response to FELTAG and in a lot of discussions since then, I think this one has been very much backed away from. So I think the position now is that we should be looking to be moving to 10% at least in September, and then maybe over the next few years increasing that to 20, maybe 25%. in my college, we're at around 10% of the main qualification for level 2 learners, and for level 3 learners, it's around 20% of the main qualification. I see a question from Kenya about were the tutor hours cut by 15%? Yes, they were. So which meant it's for the teachers, they were having to teach 15% extra on other courses. So quite challenging for them. Okay, any further questions? Dawn's asking, where does the time come from to develop the courses then? Well, initially, when we first went down this model, there was absolutely no remission at all for the teaching staff. I think that was more just driven by the financial situation that the college was in. I pushed strongly at the time to have some remission, and thankfully 2 years ago we were able to give one person from each course a small amount of remission, around about 18 hours for level 3 per year, or 12 hours for level 2, so not a massive amount. It mounts up if they are the lead SOLA person. We refer to our model as SOLA, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So if they were the lead SOLA person on a number of courses, then those would be grouped together, and they may get 150 hours if they were doing a lot of it. The second part, answer that question, Dawn, is that the content is co-developed by members of the ILT team and members of the teachers team. So some of that time comes from extra resource that I was given. And I've now got 3 full-time staff who work on the college blended learning, and that's probably going to be increased to 4 in a couple of months. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll give you an overview of SOLA now. Now, SOLA stands for Scheduled Online Learning and Assessment. I'll tell you a little first about our previous model, which we called PAL. SOLA started 2 years ago, and when we first started with blended learning, we called it PAL, which stood for Personally Accountable Learning. Now, a little warning here is be careful with your acronyms. When we told the college that we were going with a new curriculum model called PAL, some of our more sceptical colleagues said, oh, that sounds like a right dog's dinner then, doesn't it? And when 2 years ago we announced the changes to the PAL model and that we would be calling it SOLA, some of the wags remarked, oh, sod off and learn alone then. So do be careful with your acronyms. We did try to think of whether anybody would come up with a humorous use of it, and we didn't spot that one. So now with PAL, there was no remittance, and it was 15% across the board. We learned a number of lessons from that. With PAL, we found, as with many initiatives, some areas did it very well, some okay, and some areas really avoided it as much as they could. That's both the teachers and the students. So we needed to tie this down and make sure it was working effectively. So the first thing that we learned is that on some courses, the ones that were getting the higher levels of participation from students, they were timetabling it. And one of the things that kind of surprised me is that if you don't timetable this, a lot of students won't do it, particularly at level 2. And so SOLA stands for Scheduled Online Learning and Assessment. The S stands for the schedule side. And certainly found that the participation from learners increased dramatically once it was timetabled. So it covers all of our level 2 and level 3 full-time courses. Level 2, it's 30 hours per year, which equates to 1 hour per week over 30 weeks. And at level 3, it's 60 hours per year, or 2 hours per week over 30 weeks. It's timetabled. For the vast majority of courses, it's delivered in our learning centres, and it's supervised by learning centre staff. Now, typically, there may be 3 or 4 SOLA groups going on at the same time in our learning centres. These are generally sort of large rooms where there are of PCs and laptops which students can borrow, and so that's where the delivery takes place. Okay, any questions? Okay. So what are the key features of SOLA? What does SOLA looks like? This isn't a particularly good environment for me to be showing you courses on, but we are putting together a new Moodle where we will be showcasing our SOLA to anyone who's interested, and I'll share that through Rob in a week or so. This Moodle should be ready, and this will be an open access Moodle with a number of SOLA courses, so you can have a good look around. Now, SOLA, we use Moodle at our college, and each SOLA for each qualification is normally a separate single Moodle course. So the SOLA is separate to the Moodle courses for the qualification. It's a new course. It needs to have clear instructions and structure. Because the students are learning independently, it isn't just a matter of uploading some resources and activities and assessments, but you have to be very structured and very clear instructions for the students as to, read this document, watch this video, think about X, Y, and Z, do this learning activity, do this assessment with clear signposting as to exactly what's expected of them, and often some indication as to how long we would expect them to spend on a particular activity. SOLA is based around learning outcomes, and one of the tasks that we give to our course teams when planning SOLA is to think about which learning outcomes that they deliver would be best suited to online delivery, and that those learning outcomes are only delivered through the SOLA. So while they might be backed up in class, the main delivery happens on SOLA, and so the idea there is that what happened on PAL, our previous model with some courses that weren't really taking it seriously, is they just kind of taught 15% faster, which wasn't the idea behind it. So we want to say, no, you've got to take out a percentage of your learning outcomes and just deliver those online. It also meant from the learner's point of view, particularly the ones that had previously avoided doing this, it was made very clear to them that if you don't do your online learning, it's going to put your success on the course very much in jeopardy. The next point about SOLA is, where do we get our content from? Now, our teachers are extremely busy. They're teaching typically well over 800 hours per year, and so they don't have the time to develop lots of great interactive content. They have the support of my team, but with 3 or soon 4 people working across a largish college with many, many courses. I think it's something like 60 qualifications are using SOLA at the moment. They don't have the time to be developing great interactive content for all those courses either. We'd need an ILT team of 15 or 20 to do that. So we took the approach to say, well, there's a lot of fabulous stuff out there on the internet, so let's use that. So the training that we did before we launched the blended learning, a lot of that time is spent on showing people where to find the good free stuff and equipping them with the skills to evaluate that content. So the sorts of things that we look at are the NLM materials, which some of them no longer work because they use Shockwave or other antiquated web technologies. But there is still some good stuff in there, some stuff that is still very relevant and useful. So a number of our courses do make use of NLM materials. We make a lot of use of YouTube videos, and we certainly find students respond much better to video content than they do to text-based content. And we also talk a lot about using open educational resources and the various OER portals such as Jorum, OER Commons, and a number of other places where people can go and find free to use educational materials. So we do a lot of training on that, and the idea is that people find, or in partnership with my team, find material that addresses the learning outcomes. They might have to add in some extra bits of their own if it doesn't address everything. And then following on from that, build some learning activities around that content, with the idea being that when students have to process information and think about things and do stuff with that information, they're much more likely to learn. And this is where Moodle and the tools that are available in Moodle come in very useful. So we make use of some of the social tools, such as forums and glossaries, for students to do work around the content that they've just read or watched. We might use reflective tools like the journal, or setting up collaborative activities with the database tool. And then finally, the A in SOLA stands for assessment, and all SOLA learning episodes end with some kind of assessment. And normally this would be using the Moodle tools, the quiz tool, or the assignment tool. Okay, any questions? Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is the roles in SOLA. And again, this is one of the important lessons that we learned following on from our first attempt with the PAL model, was that to make blended learning work, it is very much a cross-college initiative. It involves a number of people. So I just see a question there. Do the tutors use blogs? A small number of our people do. It's not something that many people use. The journal tool has features of a blog in it, which some of the students use as a blog. For example, when our performing arts students are preparing a particular performance, their SOLA involves reflections on that performance planning, where they use the journal tool. So that's a kind of example of that. Back to the roles, so it's very much a cross-college initiative. We've learned that it must involve quite a lot of different groups of staff in the college, and to get blended working successfully, it does involve all of those people having clear responsibilities and fulfilling those particular responsibilities. So what I've got outlined on this slide are the key roles as we've evolved them within our college. The first role is the SOLA coordinator, and this is a member of the course team, and each course team has one SOLA coordinator who leads on the SOLA for that team. So their role is to, in agreement with the rest of the team, to plan and write a scheme of work, to agree which learning outcomes are going to be delivered through SOLA, and to coordinate the marking of any assessments, and to contribute to the monitoring of learner engagement. And at level 3, we give our teachers 18 hours per year, at level 2, 12 hours per year. Now, in reality, if they're doing that job properly, it's more than that many hours, and that is the way things are, unfortunately. The rest of the course team, who we call teachers, their role is to work with the SOLA coordinator to build the SOLA in partnership with my team as well, and they may be involved in some of the marking. The third role here is the personal tutors. Now, in our college, our personal tutors are non-teachers. We used to have the model that I think most colleges have, where tutorials is something that teachers do as well as teaching, but it's now here a separate role where we have personal tutors who only do tutoring and have a case load of several groups who they work with for 2 hours per week. And the personal tutor's role, very much as it is for face-to-face teaching, is to monitor engagement, to see which students are not fully participating in SOLA, and in the same way that students who are turning up late to class or missing classes or who aren't submitting assignments, to work with those individuals to improve their performance. Our Learning Centre staff, they support the SOLA sessions in the Learning Centre, which generally means just keeping an eye that the students are on task, walking the floor, solving straightforward problems. Perhaps if a video isn't working or a link isn't working, they might refer that to my team. If students have got difficult curriculum questions, the Learning Centre staff are not experts, and they will then pass that on to the teachers. The CRQ managers and leaders' role is very much to manage and lead the monitoring and implementation in their team to make sure that the team are keeping on top of the SOLA, that everyone is fulfilling their role. And we've certainly found that that is a really crucial role in this model, and that the speed to which different groups became successful with blended learning in their curriculum was very much linked to how committed and how much time and energy the managers and leaders put into it. Because the reality of blended learning, and one of the warnings, given the way the funding is working, and given that this is in some ways a response to making efficiencies, it is something that can create extra work for teachers. We've tried to develop a model to minimise that, but that we certainly found initially there was resistance from quite a few of our teaching staff, and that has to be managed sensitively and effectively by the curriculum managers. And finally, the SOLA support team. Now, those are members of my ILT team, and their roles within this model are to provide templates for people to build SOLA courses around, to deliver the training, to do the support of people in developing their SOLA modules, to do overall monitoring. And every half term, we do a full monitoring of a whole week of SOLA across all of our courses to check whether there are any issues on any particular courses, to report to SLT on how it's going across the college, and to support the quality assurance. Okay, I'm seeing another question there from Dawn. On average, how many hours are spent building a level 2 and level 3 SOLA course? I would say probably about 3 hours per week for the level 3, maybe 2 hours a week for the level 2. It does vary an awful lot, and that work is shared between my team and the curriculum team. Okay, Tim's asking, how are the hours tracked? Do we use badges? Are the timetable sessions mandatory for students to attend? The tracking is done through the Moodle logs. We've also developed a little Moodle plugin that simply appears on the front page of each Moodle course on the page and tells you how many students have logged in that week, which is a very superficial way that the teachers can have a look, and if that figure is a lot lower than the number of teachers in the group, they know to look at the logs to see who has and who hasn't logged in and what they've been doing. We don't use badges, but we are going to. My team, unfortunately, are a bit sceptical about badges. They see it as being a bit Cub Scouty, and I'm not a very dictatorial manager, so I'm trying to chivvy them along and encourage them to do it. And I've managed to persuade one of the team to experiment with badges, because I think that would certainly help with the tracking. The timetable sessions are mandatory. No, they're not mandatory. The students have to do the SOLA in the timetable session, or if they don't want to do it in our learning centres, they have the option of doing it beforehand from home or from anywhere else. The vast majority of our students do it in the timetable sessions. Colin's asking, did the support team identify free software authoring tools, etc., and how are staff shown how to use them? We've looked at some of the tools like Xerti, and not many of our teachers really took to Xerti very well. We use Articulate Storyline in the ILT team, and so some of our content is built with that tool, but that's not something we would get teachers to use. That's done within the ILT team, and Storyline, in my view, is a far more sophisticated tool than Xerti, but it's not cheap. Okay, I see some more questions coming. Yep, I know some people like it, Emily. You're not the only one. I know some people are very enthusiastic about it. Okay, just waiting for Karen's question to appear. I'll tell you what, I'm going to move on, and then I'll pick up the questions after this. Oh, okay, Karen's question has appeared. Are there any plans to roll this type of learning out to staff development, particularly induction? Yes, we do it. We deliver quite a bit of our ILT training through blended or fully online approaches, and something I'll be telling you about later is we do online training for other colleges, and so we're delivering this into quite a few colleges now, which is partly what we got our Beacon Award and the Times Ed Award for the work that we're doing supporting other providers. And so we do have blended online stuff that we've developed in-house that are using with quite a few other colleges. And we've also developed, using Articulate Storyline, the mandatory health and safety training for our staff. Okay, so if you're looking at implementing blended learning in your own organisation, I've just given here a list of the kind of key things that you need to think about in the planning. Had we known this before we started with PAL, we would have certainly saved quite a lot of time in making a lot of mistakes that we learned from as we went along. So roles are crucial, and it's not just, as I showed you when I went through the roles documentation, it's not just about the course teams and the ILT team. It's very much a wider cross-college thing that you need to think about. And you know, the majority of staff in our organisation do have a role in SOLA. You need to think about how much remission your organisation can afford. Now, in an ideal world, it'd probably be a lot more than we're able to afford, but given that the financial constraints we're under, we probably can't afford enough remission to reflect how much actual work it is. But having some remission certainly helps, and having someone who's given those hours and then has the responsibility to deliver on that has been very useful. Getting the ILT support is absolutely crucial in place, having people with the right skills to work with teachers. And most of my SOLA team are ex-teachers who have good ILT skills, and it's much more about the pedagogical skills than the ILT skills in many ways in putting good blended learning together. It's much quicker, easier to teach someone how to press the buttons on Moodle than it is to teach them about understanding, teaching and learning and blended learning in a sophisticated manner. The infrastructure is crucial, and making sure that you've got that in place. Now that's both your physical infrastructure of, do you have enough PCs if you're going to do your blended learning in your college? Do you have enough rooms? And ideally this needs to be in learning centres where these students are supervised, because you can't really put a group of students unsupervised in an IT room, and if you're putting them in an IT room with just one group and you're supervising that group, then you're losing the efficiency savings. The monitoring is crucial, particularly in the important first term, because if students learn that if they don't do their blended learning 1 week and no one notices, the word soon spreads that, hang on, doesn't matter if you don't do this, nothing happens. So getting that monitoring, who's going to be doing it, how is it going to be done. Having a quality framework in place is important, and thinking about how you're doing that. And I think perhaps most important, the training that you need to do in the year leading up to going through your blended learning is important. And we've developed bespoke training for different groups of staff that was both online and face-to-face. Okay, any further questions? Okay, so a few of the lessons learned. Learner engagement. So I put up a few silly images there to kind of express some of the issues we had around learner engagement. Now, when I first went with blended learning 4 years ago, I thought that most of our learners would absolutely love it. It would be what they've been waiting for all their lives, these digital natives who love doing everything online, and they're just going to love doing their college work online and that wasn't the case at all. It was very marmitey, as in some love it and some don't like it. My principal came up with a very good analogy, which is it's a bit like getting toddlers to eat their greens sometimes. That some toddlers, as in the little girl at the bottom, do enjoy eating their greens, but quite a few of them, like the little boy at the top, don't enjoy eating their greens very much. But the point is, greens are good for toddlers, so whether they like it or not, it's good for them, so we make them do it. And that's kind of the approach. Now, we have found over time that the resistance from learners has very much reduced. And I think that's partly as learners progress through the college, and most of our learners, well, all the ones who aren't new, are used to this, and so they've grown to like it. And we've also got better at it, and we've shared best practice. We've found out what learners respond best to. And it's things like, as you can see on the slide, making the content as engaging as possible, using as much video and interaction. They like the quiz tool in Moodle more than they like writing assignments. Making sure that the online learning isn't something that stands alone and is separate to what goes on in class, but that it's mentioned in class regularly. So that normally, good practice is one of the teachers during the week will get the SOLA course up on the whiteboard. They'll show the students what's coming up next week. They'll discuss it with them so they're ready for it. The monitoring and challenging of non-participation is also crucial, and if that doesn't happen, it's certainly the participation can go down. And I've certainly found that these things seem to happen at other colleges. We worked with a few colleges last year who have now gone live with their own versions of the SOLA model, and they are finding very similar things around how the students respond to it and the importance of monitoring and chasing students to make sure that those that are resistant do get on board with it. Oh, blank slide. Oh, which slide?
Hi Peter, is that okay? The slide's working okay?
I'm seeing a blank now after the learner engagement one. Hang on, there were a few more slides after that.
Yeah, no, Peter, I'm seeing. Let's just go back. Let's just check what Peter was saying. I'm seeing. Okay, after your Marmite slide, Peter, there's a slide coming up that learners lessons learned teacher engagement.
That's what I'm not seeing that.
Okay, Dawn says that she can see them. Justin can see them. It's only you that can't see them, I think, Peter.
Well, I kind of know what's on it, so I'll do my best to remember. Okay, I found my own version now. So I'm hoping you all can see something that says lessons learned teacher engagement. That is bizarre, isn't it? I'm just seeing blank.
Yeah, we can see that, Peter.
I'm not seeing anything now. I'm seeing the footer at the bottom of the slide, Heart of Worcestershire, but apart from that, it's just white.
Okay,
never mind. I can see my own slide as well, so I'm assuming you're all seeing that. So effective CPD absolutely crucial for teachers, because the majority of teachers don't have the confidence to deliver blended learning and to use some of the more sophisticated tools in Moodle, like glossaries and quizzes. Most teachers are happy uploading a few documents, but taking things beyond that. Also the finding and evaluating of the online resources. The right kind of ILT support, strong leadership and support from curriculum managers, getting the teachers committed to making it succeed, which at first we found we had almost the opposite thing. Some of our staff really didn't like this and were not doing their best to make it succeed. In the 4 years that we've been going, we don't have that problem, but we did have that problem in the early days. So I would certainly warn you that if you're going down this kind of approach, do be ready for some staff resistance. Okay, I'll go on to the next slide. Okay, that's still blank to me. Have you got lessons learned staff skills? Hello? Yes? Great, okay. So,
Hi, Peter. Yes. Yeah, we can see staff skills.
okay, great. So, what we did in terms of our staff skills is we prepared bespoke CPD for different roles, SOLA coordinators, teachers, personal tutors, learning centre staff and managers. That's online and face-to-face. It's available in both formats. We do a lot to share best practice. So since we launched SOLA, in all of our cross-college CPD days, we capture what's working well on particular courses and share that across other course teams. And we've certainly found working with course teams rather than a mixture of people from lots of different courses together is most effective. Next thing, lessons learned quality. I'm going to kind of rush through because I'm aware I've slightly overgone on my time. So I'll rush through all of the rest of the slides and then we'll take some final questions at the end. Quality, we have a bronze, silver and gold quality framework. We do regular SOLA observations, at least one a week, where a member of my team will observe in the learning centre very quietly without drawing attention themselves what's happening, what the learners are doing, are they sticking on task, and then they will speak to the learners afterwards about their SOLA and how they feel about it. We gather learner feedback through our QUIST groups, which is a termly group where student reps meet and feedback, and through student surveys, and we do a lot to share best practice. Okay, going on to the next slide. Lessons learned management. You seeing that? Good. The management is absolutely crucial, as with most things, I guess. It is very challenging. It is something that, as I've said, both teachers and students can be quite resistant to. And so you need strong, consistent messages from senior and curriculum managers. You need to do a lot of planning, to have a long lead in to going live with blended learning, and to pilot it, try it with a couple of groups first if you've got time. So we started planning in around about December for going live in September, so we gave ourselves about 10 months, and we did some pilots in the summer term with a few groups to just see how things work. And that managers must monitor what's going on and challenge both students and staff who are not fulfilling their roles. The next thing is supporting other providers. You seeing that? Okay, excellent. Now, part of what, as I said earlier, what we got these awards for this year is for the support that we are doing across the sector, and we've worked with quite a lot of colleges now. If any of you are interested, we are offering consultation and CPD to other organisations. The qualification that we're making most use of is something called BOLD, which is a level 2 OCN qualification, which comes in 3 units. Each unit's about 7 hours in total online flexi study, and we recommend for most staff one of these units will get them started, and for the staff that are going to be heavily involved doing all 3, so that's between 7 and 21 hours of online learning. And the unit that we do with most staff is called Structuring Your VLE, and it's a very hands-on course where people build some blended learning as they're doing their 1 hour a week over 7 weeks. So at the end of the 7 weeks, they've actually got some blended learning that they've built. And
Okay, everyone. I think Peter's just dropped out. Actually, I think I can see on the hosts that he's just dropped out. He's going to try and join us again back in here. But thank you for your question with regards to just clarifying the name of the qualification that they use for CPD. What we'll do is share that on the Learning Futures site as well. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to flick through Peter's slides a second just to see what he's got left on here. So impact implementing blended learning. Okay, so Peter's got some information to share here with regards to the improvement on success rates and the efficiency savings in £250,000 per annum. If Peter comes back online, then he'll join us and just fill those gaps in as well. improvement in digital literacy and online learning skills, and the improvement in independent learning skills, which was a point that Peter said was one of the key aims that they wished to address when they found that learners coming to them were not necessarily had well developed independent learning skills. Okay, I can see Peter's back with us. Let me just make him a host again. Okay, Peter, I don't know if you can hear us. You're back in as a host. Hi, Peter, are you there? No, don't know if Peter can. I'm not hearing Peter from my point of view. So what I'm going to do is just progress on Peter's slides, and he's going to chip in if he can join us. Peter mentioned some of these often, and here's the answer to that question with regards to bold. What I'll ask is for Peter to share that through the Learning Futures site, as I say, on useful resources, so you can see where we are there. I know Peter wanted to make people aware of an event they've got coming up on the 26th of March. Oh, okay, I think Peter's there. He's just got his microphone off. Peter, your microphone is just muted at the minute. If you can turn that back on if you're able to. Nope. Okay. So as I say, I'll ask Peter just to, if he's able to join us. If not, he'll put something on our Learning Futures site with regard to any details that I miss out within his slides. Some of the partners that Peter wanted to share, partners and external customers. You see quite a wide range there of organisations that have built to the situation where his college finds himself now, so building on their expertise, but also who they've worked in partnership with. Okay, what I'd like to do, Terry, thank you for your question. I'll get an answer from Peter if he's not able to answer that straight away. Peter is type. Peter, are you there? Hi, Peter. Okay, not a problem. What I'd like to do then is. Can you hear me now? Yes, I can, Peter. Yeah. Yes, I can, Peter.
Right, I got booted there, so sorry about that, everyone. So I had to log back in again. So let me just have a little look at some of the questions. The BOLD course, that's something we deliver. That we deliver as an online qualification, and if your staff are interested, basically if you send me an email, I can send anyone details if anyone is interested in this kind of thing. It's £90 per learner per unit. The 250,000 saving is a net saving, yes. So that's after we've taken into account the costs of my team. Any other questions?
Just seeing if
we've got a conference coming up in 3 weeks. If you just Google Fast Track to FELTAG, you'll find a page for that. And I hope to see some of you at that.
Brilliant. I think that was it, Peter. I think that was all the questions. Sorry that you got kicked out there.
That's all right. It's all part of the fun.
Can I just thank Peter for first of all for his time, but also for such a detailed and open and honest sharing of their approach, because I think there's been some really useful bits of information. As Peter said, he's kindly offered to continue that conversation. I'm also delighted to say that his college were successful in their bid with the Learning Futures programme in Phase 2, and so Peter will be joining with Hertford Worcestershire College as one of the projects, so you'll be able to keep an eye on what's going on with Peter and keep in contact with his project as well. What I'd like to do is just to spend 5 minutes before we finish of just sharing some of the where we go next after this webinar. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen with you a second, and you will see that just takes a couple of seconds to load, but you should be able to see the Learning Futures site. Wonderful. Okay, so on the Learning Futures site, I'm just going to move you over to the CPD area. So I'm just clicking on the link for CPD, and again that will just take a couple of seconds to load. And in this CPD area, what you'll is some resources where we've done the hard work. We've done the research online to look at those resources that have been identified as being good quality and useful resources, and so what we want to do is just to point you of where you're going to find those. So in the e-learning module, and you can see the webinar is the first part. This is where you can come back to and get the recording from the webinar, the input that Pete has just given. But if I move you down to the resources section, you should be able to see that those resources have been split into 3 types: pedagogy, planning, practicality. So if I open one of those, what you do is see within the research. We've tended to call these research buckets, using the piece of software Scoopit, if you're familiar with that. And what we found that's been very useful is that we're able to put in there that really drive us into, rather than just doing a net-wide search, we're able to put in there which we found that are going to be really useful for you. So as I scroll down, you'll see there's a practical guide from Edinburgh University, coming back up a little bit, pedagogic approaches to using technology for learning from Lifelong Learning UK, and is available free of charge to you. So we've, as I say, look to do the legwork for you, where you're able to dip into these and say, I'm looking for something about personalised learning. So there were 3 of those: pedagogy, planning and practicalities. Now, to further help you apply this within your organisation, I'd also just like to show you very quickly the CPD activity. So this is being developed to support you be able to pick and choose. It's a start. You're able to say, I want to get started with some of this. What can I do that's going to help me? We've tried to give an indication of the amount of time that each activity would take as well. So you can see the first one is about developing a quick audit, and it points you in the direction of the top e-learning mistakes that professionals should avoid, and it gets you to consider that list, encourage you to say which one of those or which ones of those mistakes do you agree with, and then start to apply that to your own organisation. So as you're designing and developing your online e-learning, then you're starting to build that audit tool. There's also an extension activity for that tool, is to use some of the work by, as I say, Edinburgh Napier University, and there's a very useful evaluation checklist that's in Appendix 7 of their report. And again, we're pointing in that direction to say, if you'd like to do a little bit more with regards to this, then this is one of the resources that we'd point you to. The other activities that you'll see, Activity B, what can we offer them on campus that will make the bus journey worthwhile? And designers who are sharing their thoughts on what needs to be done in a campus to make it effective learning, and what can be done online, which may happen at campus or it may happen away from a campus or place of learning. There's also an activity there with regards to the Online Learning Consortium and their quality score. This activity does require you to set up an account, but they'll see the Online Learning Consortium, and once you do have that account, you can download their quality scorecard, and again use that to help you look at evaluating how well you're providing that e-learning and what those modules might look like, what good characteristics look like. The final activity that's on there that you may wish to look at is just a bit of forward and looking forward about 2020 teachers, and that shares some of his thoughts about what a teacher might look like in the future and what they might be doing, and would encourage you to have a look at that and to think about your organisation and how that may impact. We'd also point you in the direction of the project blogs, and you can see that there's a link there, and these are the Learning Futures projects where the projects puts and their lessons as they're going through their projects. So it's worth keeping an eye on there as well to see what they're doing to support their staff as they move forward. just going to take you back onto the site for a second, just to show you that when you do become a member of the site, it's just going to take a couple of seconds to load. Go into my profile once you've signed in, then there is the option there that you can add your own comments. So if you want to start to use any of those resources, we'd really love to hear about your experience. What's worked, what have you adapted, what you've done with yourself and different teams, and we'd ask you just to add that as part of your activity feed and your blog within the Learning Futures site. So the idea is, use the webinar recording, share that amongst your colleagues and your partners that you're working with, have a look at the online resources, and then if you wish to, pick the parts that you feel of those CPD activities that have been put together to try to support you apply some of this in your place of work. I'm now going to bring us back into the slides. Just before we finish, just to remind you of the modules that are available for you. And as I say, if you keep an eye on those projects as well, they really are creating some great resources, but also it's those lessons of how they've got to the resources they're producing as well. So do keep an eye on the other modules that are being released all the time as well. We do have a couple of minutes just left over. I'm going to bring up a quick poll if you would like to just let us know what you've thought of this webinar. But whilst that's happening, if you've got any questions that you wish to post on there, then by all means. But I'm just going to load this poll onto the screen. Move that over towards the right hand side somewhere, hopefully that you can see that. Wonderful. So by all means, just pop on there. That we really do value your feedback, but if you've got any questions, you're welcome to put them into the chat area. But also I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, become a member of the Learning Futures site free of charge and start to post any questions on there. The resources that Peter mentioned, we'll get those links on there under the useful resources as well. But other than that, what we'd like to do is just thank you for your time today. Once again, to thank Peter for his really detailed and, as I say, open and honest sharing of the work that they're doing at the Heart of Worcestershire College, and to thank you very much for your time today, and we hope that you're going to join one of the future webinars as well. So thank you very much. We'll leave this open for a couple of minutes just in case there's any final questions. Lau, just to answer your question, so the webinar recording will contain the slides within that recording. So once we finish today, that recording will just be edited just to get the front and back ends off the recording if there's any bits on there that we don't need. But then the recording will go live, and you'll also be emailed a link to that recording directly. Thank you to everyone who's kindly put their comments. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, whatever you've got planned. And as I say, I'm going to be here just for a couple of minutes in case there's any final comments that people have. But I would encourage you, as I say, to go over to the Learning Futures site and continue the conversation there within any blog posts that you'd like to. Justin and Lau, thanks, and Joe, thanks for your comments. Kerry, thank you very much. Simon, thank you. Terry, thank you very much. And as I say, Peter, hopefully you're still there. Thank you for sticking with us, Peter. Sorry about the technology issue. Don't know what happened there, but thanks for coming back in. And that was brilliant. And I'll be in contact with regards to getting some links from you just to pop on the useful resources. Karen, thank you for your comment there. That's great. I think it's also worthwhile, Karen, just keeping an eye out for the instructional design webinar as well. The date's not yet been released for that one, but when it is, just keep an eye back on the Learning Futures site. I think you'll find the instructional design module will be quite useful as well.